Hello. Guess who was visited by Amazon? I have gotten my, let's see, I have to put on my glasses for this. My Folger, Romeo and Juliet, and my Pelican. And I think that we're going to do one scene, because it's really two scenes. Act 1, Scene 2. And I have been able to read all of the footnotes and annotations, and so that I can better understand what I'm trying to share to you. The overarching thing that I'm getting right now is that these beginning scenes, the first scene, of course, was a very scary scene that we talked about last time, of a street fight that happens. But this next scene has a lot of lightness to it. And then the scene that we'll talk about the next time, Act 1, Scene 3, is a comedy scene. And so there is real light happening in this play. My memory of it is that it's just a blood fest, but what I'm finding is that there's more light than I expected. But in Scene 1, 2, Act 1, Scene 2, we start with Capulet, who is Juliet's father, and the County Paris. County is another word for count, so Count Paris are talking. And Paris reminds the father that he has asked for Juliet's hand in marriage. And so he says, "So what say you to my suit?" And Capulet, the dad, says, "But saying over what I have said before, my child is yet a stranger in the world. She hath not seen the change of 14 years. Let 2 more summers wither in their pride, ere we may think of her ripe to be a bride." Paris just right away says, "Younger than she are happy mothers made." Okay, let's stop there. Reading this, I have to remind myself that we are talking about a very different culture. And in this culture, 16 is a normal age to be married. And arguing about whether or not that's right, all I know is that back then it was normal. It was not considered sick. People didn't live as long. I think it's too young. I really think it's too young. But I mean, I'm born when I'm born, so I have to set that aside and really just look at the scene. The father, he's already said, look, she's too young to get married. She's only 14. That's too young. So good for him. And then Paris says, "Younger than she are happy mothers made." And Capulet, the father, responds right away, "And too soon marred are those so early made. Earth hath swallowed all my hopes but she. She's the hopeful lady of my earth. So all of his other children have died. She's the only surviving child that he has. And so she's his heir to all of his lands as well as his heart. But woo her, gentle Paris, get her heart. My will to her consent is but a part. And she agreed within her scope of choice, lies my consent and fair according voice." So what he's saying is, the first thing is that she wants to marry you. And then I give my consent. But frankly, if she wants to marry someone, I'm likely to give my consent. It's really her choice. And so again, kind of good on him. What I think this says about the father is that he's a good dad, or that Shakespeare intends to portray him as a good father. He wants to hold to the norm and not marry her off before her time. And he is going to let her decide who she wants to be with for the rest of her life. So I think he's supposed to be a good dad, even though they're talking about an age range of marriage for Juliet that is just mind-bogglingly young. So there's that. Also, the Pelican had a very interesting fact about the actor that played Paris first. So Paris was written for the clown of the company. which we don't know if it was intended as a clownish role. It's not really written clownishly. It may just be that actor fit, and that actor didn't want to play all clowns, and he asked Bill, hey, can I play something other than a clown every single time? And gave him Paris. But I think suffice to say, it's very clear that Paris is designed as a character that the audience does not want Juliet to be around. Perv. Anyway, so then a really nice piece of language follows. The father says, this night I will hold an old accustomed feast, whereto I've invited many a guest, such as I love, and you among the store. One more, most welcome, makes my number more. At my poor house, look to behold this night earth-treading stars that make dark heaven light. Earth-treading stars. So stars that have fallen and are now walking around Earth. He's referring to all of the available young women of Verona. All of the unmarried maidens are going to be at this party. So they are earth-treading stars. Such comfort as do lusty men. Lusty is just vigorous. It does not lust. It's just vigorous. Such comfort as do lusty young men feel when well-apparelled April on the heel of limping winter treads. So all the young men are going to be there too. All the vigorous young men are going to be there too. April is the month of lovemaking in the Elizabethan world. And so we're all coming out of winter. It's April. Everyone's going to be kind of excited as people are in the spring. And he says, even such delight among fresh fennel buds shall you see this night inherit my house. It's interesting. Fennel is, and this is coming boom from the book, fennel is an herb which they thought would inspire passion. But this is also very interesting. This is why I like to read more than one version. The Pelican says that in the original text called the Quarto, it was actually femel, which is kind of a version of female. So Shakespeare is making this really tight little double meaning on this word. So he doesn't say female, he says femel, which can trigger the ear to mean fennel, which is going toward a herb believed to inspire passion, but also femel, female, so that in the way the language flips off the tongue quickly, it's going to have both effects on the audience. It's a very small thing, but it's very tight. And the father goes on. He's instructing Paris. He says, "Hear all see, and like her most, whose merit most shall be, which on more view of many, mine being one, may stand in number, though in reckoning none. Come, go with me." And he's saying, why don't you just come to this party and check all the women out? You might find there's one that you like better than my daughter, actually. Why don't you come along? So in one speech, Capulet, for me, if I accept his time, comes off as a pretty cool dude. Pretty good dad, actually. And that's how we meet him. So I think Shakespeare is making a point about that. We're in for rough waters, but I think that the first reaction from the audience is like, "Hey, I like that dad. That's a good dad." And then he calls in a serving man, and he says, "Here's a list of all the people I want invited to my party tonight. Go and tell them all." And they leave. And the serving man turns to the audience, and he says, "Find them out whose names are..." Now, the servingman, the point of this speech is the servingman can't read. So he's been given the list, he can't read it. And he says, "Find them out whose names are written here. It is written that the shoemaker should meddle with his yard, the tailor with his last, the fisher with his pencil, and the painter with his nets." Okay. This is why comedy is hard. We don't know any of that. So, just unpacking it. The Elizabethan audience assumes that a servingman probably can't read, so they're in on the joke that I can't read. You know, what's written here? I don't know what's written here. So this is the long way of saying I can't make heads or tails of this stuff, but he says it is written here that the shoemaker should meddle with his yard. Meddle is work and yardstick, and the tailor with his last. The last. I had to really go through this. The last is a model of a foot. So a tailor should be working with a yardstick or a measuring stick, and the shoemaker should be working with the last, which is the model of the foot, but it's reversed here. So that's kind of the point. Get it? These are jokes. You explain a joke, and it's no longer funny. The fisher with his pencil and the painter with his nets. Pencil in this is kind of like a brush. A painter uses a brush, and a fisherman the nets. Again, it's transposed. This brings up something. This is one of the reasons that Shakespeare is best seen and not read. Because when you read it, you have to go through all the footnotes to understand it, but when it passes through an actor, the actor looks at all the footnotes, and the actor is able to make it clear. Even if you don't understand every word and every allusion, you can get the sense of what they're saying. Much Ado About Nothing is one of my favorite Shakespeare movies, with Kenneth Branagh and his wife, Emma Thompson. And it's all comedy, and it's frothy, and it's thick, and you can understand almost all of it, especially their scenes together. So if you want to know what I'm talking about, go watch that movie, Much Ado About Nothing. And you'll see what two really wonderful actors, how they can help a person get Shakespeare without having to do all the homework. So anyway. And the servant says, "But I am sent to find these persons whose names are here writ, and can never find what names the writing person here hath writ. I must to the learned. But in good time." So he's got to go find someone who knows what they're talking about, who can read, and in good times, here comes someone who might help. And then enter Benvolio and Romeo. And Benvolio is trying to get him to look at other women still, so that he can get over his love for Rosalind, who wants to be a nun and is unavailable. And Benvolio says, "Tut, man, one fire burns out another's burning. One pain is lessened by another's anguish. Turn giddy and be helped by backward turning." That's a nice one. If you're turning and you get giddy, like dizzy, you can help yourself by turning the other way, like reversing direction, and you can clear your head. And so that's what he's saying. One desperate grief cures another's languish. Take thou some new infection to thy eye, and the rank poison of the old will die. So, Romeo will have none of it. He says, "Your plantain leaf is excellent for that." A plantain leaf is thought to have cured infection or helped with bleeding. "Your plantain leaf is excellent for that, Benvolio. For what, I pray thee, Romeo? For your broken shin." So he's saying, look, your medicine here isn't working on me, basically. There's another nice piece. So the servingman gets Romeo to read the list, and we find out all the people that are invited. And Romeo and Benvolio find out that there's this party happening at the house of their enemy. And Benvolio gets an idea, which is exactly what he was talking about before. "At this same ancient feast of Capulet sups the fair Rosalind, whom thou so loves, with all the admired beauties of Verona. Go thither, and with unattainted eye compare her face with some that I shall show, and I will make thee think thy swan a crow." I hope you got that. if I'm any an actor, you did get the idea. So go check out all the women at this party, and you might find out that Rosalind's not the prettiest girl in Verona like you think you are now. And Romeo says, when the devout religion of mine eye maintains such falsehood, then turn tears to fire. And these, he points to his eyes, these who often drowned could never die, transparent heretics be burnt for liars. One fairer than my love, the all-seeing sun ne'er saw her match since first the world begun. So he's saying, if my eyes start telling me that there's someone fairer than my Rosalind, I hope they catch fire. They're heretics, and we burn heretics at the stake. So I hope that my eyes would just burn out of my head. It's ridiculous. So Romeo's talking about his eyes. And Benvolio picks up on the metaphor for eyes, and he says, Tut, you saw her fair, none else being by. Herself poised with herself in either eye. But in that crystal scales, let there be weighed your lady's love against some other maid that I will show you shining at this feast. And she shall scant show well that now seems best. So, Benvolio then says, okay, your eyes are like scales, not fish scales, but weighing scales. And you've put Rosalind on both sides, both eyes, so she's equal. But let me put another woman on one of those scales, and you may find that that wins out. And then Romeo says, "Oh, go bite me. I'll go along, no such sight be shown, but to rejoice in the splendor of my own." And they go. And that is almost 20 minutes on that. So, yeah, check out Much Ado if you have time. Okay, we will continue this next week.